2021 edition of City Connection. City Connection is the live television program with Grand Rapids Mayor Rosalynn Bliss.
I'm getting ready to go on the mayor's TV show, so it's going to be a little bit before I can even look at it.
Community Media Center. I'm your host, Linda Galash, and Grand Rapids Mayor Rosalynn Bliss is joining me here in the GRTV studio. Today we will also feature in the program the City of Grand Rapids Public Services Department, talking a little bit about efforts about sustainability and the technology used to make Grand Rapids more environmentally healthy. We'll have James Hunt here with us shortly, and then also later in City Connection we will provide time for you to talk with your mayor, Mayor Rosalynn Bliss, for your comments, questions. You can do that through a variety of methods. You can do it at email, cityconnection@grcmc.org. Twitter is at GRTV Access, and on the GRTV Facebook page. We're also streaming live on therapidian.org. Again, City Connection, it's a collaboration between Community Media Center and the City of Grand Rapids. This is live today, August 4th, 2021. Mayor Bliss, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Can't believe it's October.
It's been a busy, busy summer and now a busy fall.
Yes,
and
been
gee,
very busy.
We were just chatting about all that's going on here in Grand Rapids. It's a very festive city, just concluding our prize welcoming week here in Grand Rapids, and then lots to come.
Yeah, it has been so busy with not just Art Prize. We just finished up Pulaski Days. A lot of events kind of got pushed to the fall because of COVID and the surge that we had in the spring, and really because people were just starting to get their vaccines in the spring. So even a lot of neighborhood gatherings. So there was Creston After Dark. There was another event in Creston this past weekend. Confluence kicked off this year for the very first time. Brewers were out on Calder on Saturday. Just a lot happening, not just downtown, but really throughout all of our neighborhoods. So it's been fun to like get back out and see people connecting safely. You know, a lot of these events are outside, so you can be outside and feel safer knowing that you're safer outside than you are inside.
We learned a bit over the last year that outside is a great place to be and to celebrate and take part. World of Winter is going to be back with us. That's going to be coming. Outdoor zone, still an opportunity. So much more to do. Yeah,
so you'll continue to see these outside spaces for restaurants, and I'm sure some of your favorite igloos and other, you know, like kind of sheds that were created last year that you could go in during the middle of winter and have a little break from the snow will be popping up all over. And then you're right, we'll be kicking off World of Winter in January. It'll go through March, and this year, you may remember last year we brought in a couple large art installations. So we had one over at Anaerobic Park, the Teeter-Totters over on North Monroe.
Okay.
So we'll bring in different art installations this year, 10 of them throughout January, February, March. So hopefully people will get back out and enjoy the 4 seasons, as I say. You know, one of my priorities was how do we make sure that we embrace the 4 seasons and be a 4-season city, and I think you'll see us building on the momentum that was created last winter.
Look forward to hearing that. I've been one of those that's just really learning how to enjoy all 4 seasons, but last year was a great lesson, and it works. Yeah. It really is a lot to do in the winter.
There is, and even this fall we have, Riverbank Run got pushed to October. We have the Turkey Trot in November, so there's still, even in October and November, there's a lot of events going on, especially with Halloween coming up. There's, I was just talking to a friend, and she just scheduled to go on a haunted tour in Heritage Hill. I know there's going to be some in our cemeteries as well. So our Friends of Grand Rapids Parks, they'll be doing events in the parks this fall as well in celebration of the holiday. So just a lot of fun stuff still happening.
Great, lots to enjoy. Well, wanted to kick in with a few things that I just saw today, and one of them was that the city is offering forum opportunities for community input when it comes to hiring the next police chief. What are the qualities that folks would like to see in the next chief, and what do you see as priorities for our next police chief?
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up. In fact, I just met this morning with a consulting firm that is helping with the search. It's going to be a national search. They are very skilled in doing searches specifically for police chiefs, so I'm excited about them bringing forward a great slate of candidates. And they are offering 4 opportunities for public input. so you can weigh in on the qualities that you think are most important, as well as what you hope to see in the search process. Ultimately, I always remind people that ultimately it's a city manager decision, not a decision that is made by myself or the city commission. So because of our form of government, the police chief reports to the city manager. And so I think people sometimes are confused about that, and they want to let me know who they think we should hire. But for me, I really want a chief that, one is really committed to working in partnership with community, building trust, building relationships, looking at ways to improve and increase accountability and transparency. But then also, I'm really hopeful that we get a chief that is committed to implementing both our strategic plan as well as the deployment study. So we had a deployment study that was done with a lot of strong recommendations that came from that, and that's a lot of the internal work that needs to happen. I think of like the deployment study are changes we need to do internally within the department, and the strategic plan is really community facing. And my hope is that we get a police chief who can do both.
Okay. When recruitment's a big thing with police department right now, whether it's throughout the ranks or at the chief level. Lots of cities do struggle when it comes to the police chief position. What do you feel is appealing for somebody to consider Grand Rapids and its unique sets of challenges and benefits?
Yeah, it is. It's a difficult time to hire. In almost every field right now, but I think it's particularly challenging in law enforcement. And I know that the firm that's doing the recruitment and the search, they're well aware of the current challenges that exist in law enforcement. But I think what makes Grand Rapids an appealing place, one, we're a great city. So I'm very biased. I think we have all the amenities of a large city, yet we're a mid-sized city, so you don't have to drive an hour and a half to get to work. And some of the challenges and frustrations people have in a big city we don't necessarily have here. And then I think I would hope that Grand Rapids would be appealing for a police chief, because I feel like we're the right size city, as a mid-sized city, that you can come in and you can really get some great work done. I think it's very different than like a New York City where you have 9 million people, where change takes time and it's much more difficult. So my hope is that we get a good pool of candidates that see the potential of the work that they can do, but then also that they come here and they love our city.
Yeah. And lots of those things we were just mentioning are some of the appeals of this city. Recruitment in the ranks is a pretty large effort right now, and we just want to kind of look at what was a COPS grant that is allowing for some more police recruiting, some more hiring, and just a little bit about what you see coming and developing through the police department.
Yeah, so we, in this last, at our last commission meeting, we had a number of grants come before us. One of them was a COPS grant, and so the COPS grant is a federal grant program that comes up typically from time to time. Sometimes it's every year, sometimes it's every few years. And this COPS grant, our police chief, Chief Payne, came before public safety and talked about the need to add additional officers to help with enhanced patrol. That currently, with our current staffing numbers, there wasn't enough individuals, sworn officers, to be able to cover the city. And so we shared some data on the percentage of the city where he just wasn't able to provide proactive patrolling. And so this specific COPS grant was to add 5 officers to provide that enhanced patrol. And so there was a lot of debate at our public safety meeting where it was discussed a month ago. A couple commissioners said they were willing to accept the grant. So it's 5 additional officers for patrol for a total of 4 years. And then, well, initially the conversation at public safety was, so a couple commissioners on public safety wanted to get private dollars to match and not use general fund to match the grant, and have it be focused on downtown and business districts. So some work was done to secure some private dollars for that, but then when it came back before the full commission last Tuesday, a couple commissioners felt that there are needs throughout the community, including in a lot of our neighborhoods. And so an amendment was made to accept the grant without private match. So we'll go ahead and match the dollars out of our general fund. And there's a couple there's a couple things happening right now in our police department. One, even though we have the department can hire and they have approved a force of 297 officers, because we've had so many retirements and resignations, we're actually operating about 20 officers short. So we really need to hire up. It takes a good 9 to 12 months to train an officer. So we really need to hire up to make sure that we get back to full force and then have a little bit of buffer, knowing that we're going to have continued attrition over the next several years. So a lot of conversations about how do we do that so that we're not in a pinch like we are right now, where we're hearing from folks all over the city that they're calling 911 and they're calling for police assistance, and it's taking a long time for our officers to show up.
And that's really what's the evidence of some of the shortage of staffing.
Yeah.
There's still ongoing pressure, though, to reducing the overall police budget, and looking at those two very, very different perspectives. Even in light of maybe there was some public protests recently.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the challenge that we're in right now, is that there are some people in our community who really want us to reduce the general fund budget for the police department. And then there's others who are very adamant that we need to increase it, that we don't have enough because we're a growing city. So we have more people living in our city. We have an increase in gun violence. Last year we had an increase in homicides. And so there are some who feel very strongly that we need more resources. And so there's a lot of diverse opinions. My priority is that we have to have a multifaceted approach. So we need to have the number of officers, the adequate number of officers needed that when a 911 call comes in, we need to be able to respond quickly if a police officer is needed for that call. But we also need to make sure that we are investing in violence prevention efforts, that we're starting to expand our mental health and behavioral health supports, and we're doing that right now. We've started it with the homeless outreach team. We'd like to expand that through a mobile crisis unit. So as we really diversify and think about how we respond differently, we still need to make sure that we have enough resources for immediate response as well as diversion. Okay. So that to me is the conversation we need to have. I wholeheartedly support the fact that we need to invest in efforts to prevent crime to begin with and get to the crux of the issue. But the reality is we also need to make sure that we have adequate police staffing to respond when we need an officer to respond. Okay. So that's the balance right now. And we need accountability, and that's why I'm really grateful for the work happening through Brandon David's office with the Office of Oversight and Accountability.
And then the Cure Violence program has taken some steps forward, so tell us where we are on that.
Yeah, so we accepted a grant from Spectrum Health for $300,000 to go towards the Cure Violence program. So Urban League is taking the lead on that. They have hired violence disruptors and are working in partnership with the national organization, and that program is launching and getting off the ground as we speak.
Okay.
Yeah, now there won't be immediate outcomes, right? That will take some time, but I'm really hopeful that we'll start to see the impact of that program quickly.
Acknowledging there won't be immediate outcomes, what do you see as some of the very first steps that might be taken? Yeah, so I mean the big part, the essence of that program is building those relationships and having individuals who are building relationships with individuals to prevent the crime from happening in the first place. So part of that is making sure that you have the right people in those positions that have deep relationships in community, and then having people who are trusted who can step in when they hear that there's a conflict to prevent that conflict from becoming violent. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we're time for our first break. We'll be right back. This is City Connection, and when we return, we'll be back with James Hurt. He's with the City of Grand Rapids Public Service Department. We'll be back after this break.
How do you build a strong local food economy? Meet Chris. Chris is opening Osteria Rosa, a locally sourced Italian restaurant in a building brought back to life by 616 Development. But he doesn't know any local farmers to supply him with food year-round. This is Melissa. Melissa runs the Fulton Street Farmers Market and publishes a long list, even in the dead of winter, of available produce, meats, bakery goods, and more on the Rapidian. This is Amy. Amy wants to do more to support the farmers in her local food economy. Amy talks to Melissa, who introduces her to farmers at the Fulton Street Farmers Market, and Amy, in turn, publishes their stories, also on the Rapidian. Chris hears about the Rapidian and now has access to a local grocery list and information that he needs to make connections with local farmers. He feeds his patrons with local food year-round. Connections multiply, meals are shared, a stronger local food economy is built.
GRTV is a place where you can share your videos with the Grand Rapids community. A place you can share your passion, your opinion, your viewpoint, and your story. We offer low-cost classes on video production, free equipment lending to certified members, and a non-commercial channel for broadcast on cable television in the Grand Rapids area. GRTV is a true free speech forum and will not censor your content. If you're already creating videos and would like to air your show on GRTV, visit grtv.org/shows/submit. To see what equipment we have to offer, check out our equipment page at grtv.org/equipment. And if you're interested in taking our production classes, head to grtv.org/classes. Use our platform to amplify your voice at GRTV, a service of the Community Media Center.
Good to be back, and I'm glad to be joined today by James Hurt. So James is our director of our Public Services Department. James has been with the city for how many years now?
Almost 23.
Wow, 23. I was going to say, you've been there as, the entire time I've been there, and I'm
That's
16
correct.
years on the commission, so a long time. Wow, 23 years.
Almost 30 years in public service.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's wonderful. Remind me where you came from.
I was the city manager in a small town north of here, Newaygo.
That's right. That's right. I knew it was a small town. So,
Yeah.
Came to the big city,
I did.
and you've moved through a number of departments.
I have.
Until you got to the position that you're in today. So tell us a little bit about your journey and trajectory in public service.
Well, I grew up on the east side of the state. I'm an east sider. And
We won't hold that against you.
Don't hold that against me. Don't hold that against me. Through the course of getting through high school and beginning my college career, I transferred to Grand Valley. I came to the west side. I met a wonderful woman, got married, and never looked back. This place is home. This is a great place to be. Grand Rapids in West Michigan is an awesome place to raise a family. So I've enjoyed it very much.
Yeah.
My first job out of college really was in sort of like a planning and zoning kind of job. Then I worked my way into an assistant city manager and a city manager. And then I transferred to the city of Grand Rapids back in 1999. I came into the community development department as an administrative analyst, working a lot with federal grants and infrastructure projects, and progressed over the next 20-some years to where I'm at today. So I've been a department director twice in different departments. I'm now managing director overseeing 5 departments. So I oversee the engineering department, our water department, parks and recreation, environmental services, and public works.
Yeah.
It's about 400 employees within that group. It's a large group, and there's a lot of field staff. We're delivering services to this community every single day.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so I remember when you were in community development and code enforcement and then parks.
Yep.
And now you oversee those 5 departments. So for people who are not familiar with the 5 departments, I think everybody has a sense of parks, right?
Yep.
They take care of our parks, maintain our parks. They do recreational programming.
Cemeteries is in that group as well.
Cemeteries, which by the way, I've gotten a lot of compliments on this
Good.
year that
That's
we've
good to hear.
improved maintenance, so thank you. So talk about the other departments and kind of what that entails.
Yeah, so the Public Works Department is mainly within street maintenance work and then what we would call sort of our solid waste and materials management. So we take care of everything in the right-of-way in terms of potholes, plowing snow, curbs, street sweeping, everything that's above surface in that department. So we're doing mainly maintenance.
Trees, tree planting, tree trimming.
That's on the forestry side, which was really within the Parks Department. Public Works, we also do trash and recycling and yard waste collection. And I'm really happy to tell you that we started our compost operation this year for the first time ever.
Yay.
I'm very excited about that.
So for those of you who don't know, I think I've been talking about this for
You have, Mayor.
like 8 years.
Even when you were commissioner.
I know, it's been a long time. So for people who aren't familiar with what we did this past year, why don't you explain it?
Yeah, so for a number of years, the city was more of a transfer station, if you will. We have a drop-off location for yard waste material. We pick up our own at the curbside. And at the end of the year, we would be hauling that material somewhere else to be composted. We engaged a consultant and brought in a contractor to run the site. They brought the equipment. We built some facilities out there, and I'm very happy to tell you we have windrows out there, and we're composting material. And I know residents are picking it up. So they're able to come and get a little bit of material for free. Just have to show up with some sort of a truck and put it in your trunk, if you will. But we are giving out compost material for free.
Yeah, that's great. So this is for those of you familiar with our yard waste site. It's off of Butterworth. We call it Domtar.
2001 Butterworth is the address.
Yep. Why do we call it Domtar?
Domtar was the company, the gypsum mine company that made the drywall board that was on that site.
So funny, I didn't know that. Yeah, I mean, I always refer to it as Domtar.
Most people do.
Yeah. So out there, you can take, if you're a city resident, you can take your yard waste, drop it off for free, or as you said, pick it up curbside. And now we're creating the compost, and it's a great partnership because this company we're working with, they can sell it, but then also some of our residents can, or some of it can be given away free to our residents.
And they really understand the biology and the chemistry and all the materials that go into making good compost. It's a good partnership that we've had, and we're coming to our end of our first season, and I'm really pleased where we're at.
Yeah, and speaking of Butterworth, the county recycling facility is out there, and City of Grand Rapids is one of the few cities that offers no cost recycling.
That's correct.
I should clarify because we pay for it out of the refuse millage.
It's not out-of-pocket cost.
It's not no out-of-pocket cost.
That's correct.
Thank you. So we have a high participation rate.
We do.
You've worked really hard over the last couple of years to reduce contamination.
Yeah.
Do you want to speak to that?
I'd be happy to. So back in 2010, we launched our single stream recycling program in partnership with Kent County Public Works. It was very successful. We saw tonnage rates go up immensely. We saw participation rates get up into the 80% range of our residents. We did really well for a number of years, and over the last 4 or 5 years, we've seen people not recycle as much. So it's a reminder that we have to keep putting out in front of people. And you're right, Mayor, we've seen an increase in contamination, and that's a constant education that we have to have with our residents. And you can't put yard waste in there. And the county came out a couple of years ago with no longer taking plastic bags.
Yeah.
And that's been hard for residents to understand because it's plastic. You would think it could go into the container, but it really gums up the machinery when they sort it.
Yeah.
So they outlawed, they prohibited those kind of bags.
Yeah. For those of you who haven't been at the recycling facility, a lot of it is automated. And so when you're there, you can see the problem with the plastic bags because they blow and they get caught into the gears and things like that. So it is unfortunate, but for good reason.
Yep.
And there are locations you can take your plastic bags. We've actually talked about, can we set up other sites where people can drop them off?
Yep.
Yeah, so we have this great partnership with the county around recycling. The county is also working right now to think of, to create a new sustainable business park. So there's a lot of conversation at the county level. So potentially there could be some changes in how the county diverts waste from landfill, which is ultimately their priority, and we'll continue to work on that with them. So.
Yeah, so Sustainable Business Park that they're working towards, they've identified an anchor tenant. We're trying to work through what does it look like for us. As you know, we're trying to figure that out. It's a great idea. It's just a matter of how does it all fit into the system, countywide.
Yeah. So we'll stay with that. We'll stay working on that. So we have a couple minutes left. Why don't we touch on, so in addition to the parks and public works and streets and sidewalks and snow plowing, you also oversee water. And a really exciting project is the Anaerobic Bio Digester. You want to speak to that?
Yeah, so we are getting towards the finish line, Mayor, of getting the digesters up and running. There's 3 tanks. They each hold just over 1 million gallons of biodigested material, and we've got one running. We're making gas, And we're going to be working on the second one here shortly, and it's a really exciting project. It really speaks to the mission of what that department's all about, right? The recovering resources, and this is what this project's going to be as far as the digesters, the phosphorus recovery that we're going to be doing, the selling of the natural gas. It really is an exciting project. It's one of the first of its kind in the country.
Yeah.
I know you've toured it, and it's exciting.
Yeah.
We're going to be having more tours so that we can showcase this off and all the good work that the people of the Environmental Services Department have put together. But we're really close, Mayor. We're getting really, really close to the end.
Yeah, it's so exciting. So I was out there probably 2 months ago and did a tour.
Yep.
It's been several years to build the facility. It's a
taken
massive,
a few years, that's for
massive
sure.
facility.
Yeah.
You know, I remind folks that we are kind of at a crossroads. We would have either had to add on to our wastewater treatment facility or find another alternative.
That's correct.
For our waste. And we have a growing food manufacturer and beer manufacturers in the city, and they produce really rich waste. And what we learned is that that waste can be utilized to create renewable natural gas.
That's correct.
So it's a very exciting endeavor that we are embarking on, and we're in partnership with DTE,
Yep.
Which is wonderful.
Yep.
And some of that renewable natural gas will be utilized to provide fuel for
the rapid
our
buses.
rapid buses.
That's correct.
So it's an interesting cycle,
Yep.
and we'll be able to keep that energy right here in our city.
It's a very exciting project. It's coming to the end, and like you said, it's taken a couple of years.
Yeah.
We're really excited to get to the finish line.
Yeah, and in the midst of COVID, as
Oh gosh, yes.
all the construction and steel and supplies increased in cost. So unfortunately, it did come in higher than we anticipated
did.
originally, yet it's still quite a bit less than what it would have cost us to expand the facility.
Yep.
To take in additional waste.
Yeah, COVID definitely causes some challenges with labor, materials, trying to get the project finished. So it has taken a little bit of a challenge to us.
Yeah. One other exciting endeavor that we're embarking on is out at our Lake Michigan filtration plant.
Oh yeah.
So we recently received approval to add a solar array out at the plant. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, that's a very exciting project, Mayor. I know you've been involved with this. It took a little bit to put together, but I'm pleased to tell you that they're installing the panels.
Yeah.
The solar array is going in, and we're going to be producing electricity.
Yeah.
And it's going to help feed that plant.
Yeah.
It's very exciting. It speaks to our renewable energy goals.
Yeah.
It speaks to our strategic plan as a city, and we're very excited about it. So yeah, we're coming to the finish line with that one too.
Yeah. So
A
that
lot of
is
exciting things happening.
It is, and for folks who don't know this, we'll be that's technically behind the meter.
Yep.
So we'll be generating the energy, solar energy, on site and using it to support the plant. It doesn't generate 100% of the energy needed for the plant, because Lake Michigan Filtration Plant is one of our largest users.
That's correct.
Of energy in the entire city, but it'll offset the energy quite a bit.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's
We're very
great.
excited.
Yeah, it's super exciting. So with that, we're about out of time.
Okay.
Out of time. So we're going to take a little break, and then we'll come back over here and answer a few more questions.
Wonderful.
And we'll have Linda be a part of that conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks.
For over 30 years after humble beginnings as a public access TV station, the Community Media Center has grown to be an active, multi-platform media and technology assistance organization, encouraging and enabling our community to push their creative boundaries. We power a variety of resources, including a music-centered community radio station, WYCE, a community venue with stage and screen at Wealthy Theater, citizen-driven journalism with the Rapidian, a web development team empowering local nonprofits, an education department that trains and broadens students' minds, and a free speech public access television studio, GRTV, where it all began. By introducing audiences to new voices and ideas, we enhance community engagement and create connections between artists and audiences, enriching our city's cultural offerings. We empower and collaborate with platforms and resources accessible to all and used by all. Every free democratic society depends on media, accessible to the community and uncensored by government. The Community Media Center continues this work for the media landscape of today and tomorrow. These platforms and services empower our neighbors to tell their stories and explore the richness of culture that Grand Rapids has to offer. Connect, discover, learn, create, and share. The Grand Rapids Community Media Center.
Welcome back to City Connection. Mayor Bliss and Director of Public Works James Hurd just having a conversation on what that vast department does. Now we're into the Q&A section, and we do have a question for you.
Okay.
James, we have somebody asking, this is Brian asking, I saw my neighbor put their overflow trash in the recycling a few times. Is there a way or a place to report that?
You could certainly call 311 and report that. It's something we would want to come out and take a look at and inspect it. We want to change the behavior of that resident, because putting trash in your recycling is it's not a good thing. It does affect the entire load. It can affect the quality of that material, but it does happen. So last fall we did a program that was called Feet on the Street. So we went cart by cart looking and confirming how people were recycling, giving them kudos. Hey, you're doing a great job, or boy, you could do a little bit better here, or you got trash in it and you really can't put that in there. So they should call and report it, because we would like to address that with that resident.
Tell a little bit more of what the damage done is when that happens.
Well, the load could be rejected from the county's recycling center, so then we would have to take it to the incinerator. Mm-hmm. So that material that truck has collected is no longer going to be recycled. So it affects the whole load, and that's not something we want to do.
Yeah. Okay. Well, one of the things you were talking about, the vastness of this department is amazing to me, but cemeteries is a part of this. Yeah. And Mayor Bliss just brought up that Oak Hill Cemetery has a new designation as a arboretum or a arbor.
Yeah. Yes, there's some wonderful trees in that cemetery. It's a beautiful cemetery. It's one of our prized possessions that we have, and it was just designated as an arboretum, as you mentioned. So very exciting award for us, if you will, and something that our Parks Department is very, very proud of.
Yeah, and in addition to our Parks Department, we have an Urban Forest Committee, and I think they've been talking about it for years. Again, how do we really elevate the value of trees, but also recognize the amazing, old, beautiful trees that exist throughout our city?
Describe that particular cemetery, just the characteristics of it that earned it this designation. You talk about the old trees, the history, all of that.
It's all those things. Yeah. In fact, the committee the mayor is talking about does a mayor's award for Tree of the Year.
Yeah.
And they've had some big, beautiful trees that they've nominated that have been just really exciting to see.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, one of them was in the cemetery, and we there's a group that provides or leads history walks through the cemeteries. I went on one, actually 2 or 3 of them with Commissioner Kelly when I was commissioner. But Commissioner Kelly and I did Oak Hill together, and it's unbelievable the history that exists there and what you can learn about people. People who really helped build our city.
So a lot of names you may recognize that show up on streets and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Those
It is
are-
very exciting.
Yeah, again, I can't get over how many different types of things this Department of Public Works touches, from the trees of a cemetery being designated this, to biodigesting of waste and all of that.
Just to clarify, so there's a Department of Public Works, but what I'm talking about is the Public Services Group.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's actually 5 departments that make
Okay.
up that group.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, I appreciate that clarification. Wanted to ask you a little bit about, you guys were just chatting a little bit ago about LED lighting and that being a part of what's going on.
Yeah, so this was, again, something the City Commission and the city talked about for at least a decade, I feel like.
It's been at least 10 years.
Yeah, Mayor Hartwell brought it up when he was mayor, and just really couldn't get support around the table because the price tag is pretty significant. But a couple years ago, after a lot of research by the department, we moved forward with converting all of our street lights in the city to LED lights. So the city of Grand Rapids, we have about 18,000 street lights throughout the city. They're on the primary circuit, so they're on a separate circuit from Consumers Energy. So we have our own primary circuit
correct.
that we manage at the city, and it needed significant upgrades. And then a lot of the light posts had to be replaced, and then the lights themselves. And the interesting thing is the light that we selected, and then how it's a smart light. So I don't know if you want to speak to that.
Sure.
It saves us energy,
Saves us
but it does
energy.
more than that.
Yep. The LED lamps we have the ability to turn them up and turn them down. So in the past, we were not able to know which street lights were on and which ones were off, as opposed to going out and physically seeing them. Now we can do this all, because it's a smart light. We can turn them on and off. You can have a lot more information at your fingertips, and it's going to be saving us on electricity. That's one of the bigger savings for us.
Yeah,
I mean,
over $300,000 a year.
It's a large amount of savings that we're going to have. But the infrastructure was what was struggling. The street lights, the arms, the poles really needed to be replaced. We were not doing a real good job of the asset management with those lights. We've been talking about it for over 10 years, and I'm really pleased to tell you that we're replacing them now.
Yeah.
We're right in the midst of the replacement program today.
Yeah, and that was with the primary circuit and the street lights, like a $15 million investment.
Yeah, it was kind of in 2 phases.
Yeah.
So looking at that $300,000 savings per year, do the math for me. When do you earn back that original investment, and then it's just benefit from that?
Well, for every $300,000, that's,
But
9 years.
transitional a little bit, right? You
Right.
gotta implement a little bit at a time here
Right.
and there. And I think there was discussion even about the hue of the lights and what was more appealing,
Yes,
and a
there
lot of
was.
conversation on that. A lot of conversation.
They call it the temperature of the light.
Okay.
So we picked a standard called 4,000. And it's really the temperature. It's consistent with a number of other agencies that are using the same kind of light. Consumers Energy uses 4,000. A number of other cities have chosen 4,000 as their standard. It's really about safety.
Right.
It's about being able to see people out in the street, pedestrians, bikers, whatever it might be out there, so that it's safe. And it's proven that it definitely provides better light on the street.
Yeah. The other thing that I think was compelling to some of my colleagues on the commission as well is, historically we've always been a complaint-based system. So we would have neighborhoods with a lot of streetlights that were out, and if no one let us know or we didn't do a proactive scan, very often there could be streetlights out for months, if not years, without us knowing. And so you had a real disparity between the neighborhoods where people would call in as soon as a streetlight was out, and people in neighborhoods that wouldn't necessarily call in or didn't know to call in. And so with this, having it be all tied to a digital network, we can make sure that people don't have to call in when there's a street light out. We'll now be able to manage it internally and make sure that doesn't, that we're able to respond more quickly when there is an outage.
I imagine anything that moves beyond the complaint-based system is kind of a benefit in the environment of
Right.
Yes.
the situation. Speaking of environment, there seems to be such a sustainability and environment consciousness to that department and what you're doing. Talk a little bit about how that's kind of been a part of the method.
Well, all the departments I referenced all have an ear and eye towards sustainability. When we talk about our Vital Streets program, through our engineering department, we have added a component of what we call green infrastructure. So whenever we're designing a new road, we're always taking into account, how do we manage the stormwater that's on that road? And we've installed a lot of rain gardens. We've added a number of things to try to take care of that stormwater so that it's clean before it hits the river. That's one component. We talk about LED, that's very sustainable. We talk about recycling, we talk about the digester. All of these are our effort and really kind of living out our strategic plan and our values of being a sustainable city. It's being embedded in all of our departments. It really is.
Well, and I would say even, obviously with forestry, but then even parks. So we recently did the ribbon cutting at Roberto Clemente Park, and it has green infrastructure throughout the entire park. And so you're seeing that more and more with the new park designs that we're doing. So as James said, it's really embedded in the departments. And James works really closely with Allison Sutter from our sustainability office.
What's on the horizon? Areas that you really want to get to, that really you want to embed some more new technology? Technology seems to be a pretty large part of this that will really lead to some more sustainability and care about the environment of the city.
Well, there's always have something going on. One of my goals has been, and it's not necessarily on a technology side, it's more, I'm trying to be more sustainable with our food waste. We've had a lot of residents who have asked and requested that we start looking at doing curbside collection of organic material. We currently only accept yard waste, so basically leaves and brush. But we really want to move towards having more sustainable, to take that out of the waste stream and be able to reuse it. I mean, it's a large component of what we're putting into either the incinerator or the landfills. If we could pull that out and recycle it, it would be put us way ahead.
Yeah, and just to make sure people know, we updated our ordinance a few years ago, and we do allow backyard composting in an approved container. Obviously, we don't want rodents to get into composting, but that's just such a small percentage of people in the city that do backyard composting.
Okay. Well, great information. Very good to talk with you again.
Yeah, you
so
too.
help me if I get the title wrong. So James Hurd is Managing Director of Public Services. Got it.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks for the correction on that.
You're
Thanks
welcome.
for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Great. Well, we'll be right back. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back with you after this.
For over 30 years after humble beginnings as a public access TV station, the Community Media Center has grown to be an active, multi-platform media and technology assistance organization, encouraging and enabling our community to push the creative boundaries. We power a variety of resources, including a music-centered community radio station, WYCE, a community venue with stage and screen at Wealthy Theater, citizen-driven journalism with the Rapidian, a web development team empowering local nonprofits, an education department that trains and broadens students' minds, and a free speech public access television studio, GRTV, where it all began. By introducing audiences to new voices and ideas, we enhance community engagement and create connections between artists and audiences, enriching our city's cultural offerings. We empower and collaborate with platforms and resources accessible to all and used by all. Every free democratic society depends on media, accessible to the community and uncensored by government. The Community Media Center continues this work for the media landscape of today and tomorrow. These platforms and services empower our neighbors to tell their stories and explore the richness of culture that Grand Rapids has to offer. Connect, discover, learn, create, and share. The Grand Rapids Community Media Center.
Welcome back to City Connection, and our thanks to James Hurd. He's the Managing Director of Grand Rapids Department of Public Services. Some great questions there, some great information, and Mayor, we've got a few more questions coming in, so let's take off. This one's from Sarah, and it says, if the city is opening new police positions, what does that look like, and how does the city do so equitably?
Yeah, so the COPS grant will enable us to hire. Right now, we're already in the process of hiring. So we're trying to hire, and we're doing a kind of two-pronged approach with hiring. We have a recruitment process. So we're trying to recruit individuals who live in Grand Rapids who are interested in serving. And then we'll support them to go to the academy, and then we'll support them as they get trained. And we'll pay for that. So we have this recruit class, and we've worked really hard to use that process to diversify the department, both with increasing gender and racial diversity within the department. So we'll continue to do that. We also are recruiting and trying to hire people who are working at other departments who are already trained and certified, that we can get them trained and on the, approved to get out there to do patrol more quickly than our recruits. And so this will enable us to do that. Right now, the challenge is because of retirements and people leaving, many of them either leaving law enforcement altogether or going to other departments. So just in the last 2 weeks, we've lost 2 officers who went to other departments. We really need to increase our hiring so that we don't have this massive reduction in the availability of sworn officers when we have attrition. So this will enable us to kind of have a better buffer to get through those highs and lows with retirements and with people who are leaving. Truly, just people are leaving at a record pace these days. So that will help. And then also, the chief has been very clear that in order to truly implement neighborhood policing throughout the community, he needs a certain number of sworn officers out on patrol, and right now we just don't have that number yet. So we're not able to fully implement this vision of neighborhood policing that we're trying to get to.
Okay. Part of what you mentioned was specifically saying recruiting within the city. And I know in the past there's been some criticism that the number of police officers that do not live here locally. So how do you go about that? Already kind of challenged on being able to recruit and fill those positions.
Yeah, so we have been doing a lot of recruitment efforts in partnership with Grand Rapids Public Schools and with GRCC and GVSU. And then we do have some incentives at the city where we try to encourage folks to live in the city. So we do have a program where we will assist with a down payment if you buy a home in the city. So we're looking at what we can do legally to, we can't mandate it. A lot of people want us to mandate city employees and police officers and firefighters to live in the city. We're not legally allowed to do that. There was a state law that was put in place decades ago that prevents local units of government from mandating where people live. And so now we have incentives and we try to incent that. And it is tough sometimes.
Okay. Well, good to hear a little bit more about that and learn that a little bit. Thanks for the question from Sarah. Kira has a question about something that happened recently, was a new sister city relationship with South Korea. And here's the question. She says, I saw the signing, city signed a sister city agreement with the city in South Korea. What does that mean exactly?
Yeah, so we have a sister city committee that has been in place for decades. We currently have 5 sister cities, and it was actually a group of individuals from the community about a year and a half ago that came to us and asked that we explore a sister city relationship with Gangneung-gu in South Korea. That there's a lot of folks who live here who are from South Korea, but also a lot of our businesses have relationships or they have a business footprint over in South Korea. And so our sister cities committee started to really explore that. What would it look like? Is it something we wanted to move forward with? They started having meetings with individuals in Gangneung-gu, and then our city staff started having virtual meetings because it was in the midst of a pandemic. Although the conversation started pre-pandemic, so maybe it's going on 2 years. Then I met virtually with the mayor a couple times, and what made Gangneung-gu so interested is that they love Art Prize. And so a few years ago, they created kind of a mini Art Prize in their city and replicated what we did here. So that arts and culture piece was a draw for them to build a deeper relationship with the city of Grand Rapids. So what that will entail is we'll continue to build relationships across, between the two cities, but also within our communities. Hopefully we'll have a delegation from their city come to Grand Rapids and visit, and then we'll do the same at some point.
Okay.
So a lot of our sister cities, we do have these exchanges where we'll go to visit. In fact, in Zapopan, we have a number of individuals here who will often take products down and work with nonprofits in Zapopan to support children and families. We have close relationships with some of the schools there. So every sister city relationship is a little bit different. Some is more heavily focused on education or a closer connection with nonprofits. Some is much more focused on economic development. So in Perugia, we have a strong relationship around economic development. And so it's a little bit different for each one.
You mentioned that this relationship had a basis in the fact that many citizens here are from there, as well as business relationships from companies here that are there. Is that typically the factors that you look at when that's a consideration? Yeah,
so this is actually the first time since I've been on the City Commission, so I'm in my 16th year. This is the first time that we've added a sister city. So I don't know for our 5 others, I don't know the history of what elevated those cities at the time and who brought them forward. I know that I have visited a couple of our sister cities, and I know that there are deep ties and relationships, and I've renewed some of those relationships. So I've been to Zapopan and I've been to Perugia, and we recommitted or kind of reestablished our relationship. But I don't know for each one kind of who that spark was that said we should explore a sister city.
Know what was the first, and what are all 5 of the others?
Yeah, so we have Ga West, we have Omihachiman, we have Bielska Belko in Poland. Obviously, we have a strong Polish community here, and then Zapopan, and then Perugia.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting program, and that it takes. Is it a requirement to renew, to re-up, or is it just a recommitment of sorts?
Yeah. So the ones that I've been a part of that are recommitment. I also did this with our sister city in Poland. They had a contingent come here probably about 3 or 4 years ago, and we had kind of a mini ceremony, exchange of gifts, as well as like a re-signing. So I think that's just a common practice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there is a topic I wanted to get to before we close out in the next 4 or 5 minutes, and that is affordable housing. And the city has just established a new fund or some new funding. So I want to hear all about that.
Yeah. So this is the Affordable Housing Fund. City Commission started talking about this a few years ago. We, at that time, started to take funding from our payment in lieu of taxes projects and putting it into a fund, which we've in the last few years, we've built it up to a little over $700,000. But knowing that we want to build the fund up, my goal would be to have about a $20 to $25 million affordable housing fund. So when our city manager came on, we kind of put a pause on trying to figure out what does the affordable housing fund look like. I'd say re-engaged in those conversations last year, decided to do it in partnership with the Community Foundation and have it be a non-endowed fund with an appointed board that would make recommendations to the City Commission on how those funds would be used. And the hope is to have those funds be able to be used for smaller infill projects, potentially, low interest or no interest revolving loan. So how do we use those dollars more creatively? Because right now, our tools are limited, right? We have low-income housing tax credits, which are state and federal tax credits, or you have, some for, market rate. But this missing middle housing and smaller infill housing, there aren't very many tools available. So the intent was, how do we have a fund that can help with that? And so with the ARPA funds that our city was allocated, the rescue dollars, we're going to take $5 million of that and put it in the Affordable Housing Fund. And then my hope is that we get additional donations to build that fund up. And then hopefully next year we'll have some, I'm hopeful that our revenues will come in at a higher rate than we're projecting, and then we'll hopefully be able to allocate some additional funds next year to the Affordable Housing Fund. So that's very exciting. We set the fund up, we set the agreement up with the Community Foundation, and now we're in the process of appointing the board.
Okay. So when you have your sights set on, was it 20 million?
Before I'm done being mayor, I would love for it to be $20 million.
Okay. And what do you see that empowering Grand Rapids to do if that's the goal, and that then expands the program to include what else?
So it could be used potentially for a number of things. It could be used to help people who want to have an accessory dwelling unit, especially if they're willing to rent that out at an affordable rate. It could be an incentive for developers to add affordable housing. It could be a revolving fund, or to help fill the gap for smaller low-income housing. So like right now, to get low-income housing tax credits, it's mostly for larger projects. So it has to be at least like a 48 unit project. Well, we have a lot of spaces in the city where potentially we could do 2, 4, 6, 8 units. And right now, there are very few funds available to help with that development. So we're looking at all of the different potential creative ways that we could use those dollars to help spur some of this infill around low income and affordable housing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Affordable housing in general was one of your top priorities. It has been for quite a while. And how far do you feel this moves the marker?
You know, it moves us forward in the right direction. It's not the silver bullet, obviously. We have to do a whole host of things, which we've done already to some extent. You know, we've changed the zoning code. We're looking at updating our master plan. That needs to have an eye for growth, and it needs to be focused on housing. You know, I'm still on the board of the Housing Stability Alliance, and hopefully that nonprofit will be off the ground, and we'll have some good data to start making decisions on as we look at housing across the entire spectrum, from unhoused to housed by choice. You know, we need good data, which we did the housing needs assessment, and so we have a good foundation for data. And then we also need to do work in bringing in our partners, because this isn't just an issue in the city of Grand Rapids. We need a county-wide approach to housing. And we need to make sure that all of our, you know, neighboring cities and the county is a part of this solution, right? Like, someone could live on Lake Michigan, which is on a transit line, but maybe it's in Standale or Walker or Allendale, and that's just as valuable as having affordable housing in the city of Grand Rapids. I mean, people don't even know where those jurisdictional lines are, right? So we need to make sure that we're also working across jurisdictional lines.
Okay, well, a great move forward with this new Affordable Housing Fund. Well, that will wrap things up for the month of October, City Connection. Thank you, Mayor Bliss. Again, a great informational show.
Yeah,
City Connection will be back next month. I'm Linda Glash, closing out on City Connection here on GRTV Livewire Channel 24.